Hi, everybody. Dorothy here, Professional Astrologer. You can find me right here on the web, nhastrologer.com. I've been an astrologer since 1987, been a long time. So my forecast today, what I do, if this is your first time finding me, if it isn't, please comment, like, and share. And if this is your first time, basically, I'm going to talk about the week that's coming up. It starts June 1st. I like to start on Mondays. The point is this week, I'm just going to focus on a couple of very important things because the other stuff is like, it's just going to whip right by. All right, because we have Venus making a conjunction to the sun. This is an inferior conjunction, happens only every 18 months. So that's pretty cool. And then I'm going to talk about the eclipse that's coming up on June 5th in the sign of Sagittarius. This forecast is for everybody. It is not based on your sun sign or what your zodiac sign is. Tropical zodiac right here. So we're going to use that. And so this means everybody can use this information. You do not have to be overly concerned about what your sun sign is and how it interacts with you. This is good general information. Each and every one of us is going to filter this information, just like the planets in a sign. Each one of us is going to filter the information we hear, whether it's in this forecast or somebody else's, through our own filters, and keep what is useful and just let the other stuff just drop away. So if something doesn't resonate with you, A-okay, don't worry about it. All right, and that's my casual. I'm a Gemini, so I'm kind of casual about a lot of things. But Moon in Capricorn makes me a little serious sometimes. I don't play enough. But anyways, let me make sure I'm recording. Yes, let's go on. I'm going to show you some charts, get pen and paper out, because I'm going to give you dates. This Sun-Venus conjunction is relating to something that happened 8 years ago, and this eclipse coming up on the 5th is related to some stuff that was in December 2018. I'm going to give you all those dates. So let's get started. Now, we have the first thing, we have all kinds of stuff going on. Monday, Tuesday, the 1st and the 2nd of June, the moon in the sign of Libra is going to help us hopefully get into alignment and balance with what it is we want and need. This will also give just a sort of hello to Venus in Gemini, because Venus rules Libra. So when we have that going on, we know there is a lot of information with Venus today and this whole week. But I immediately want to go to Wednesday, June 3rd, 1:44 p.m. is when the Sun and Venus make their conjunction at 13 degrees of Gemini. It's an inferior conjunction. That just means that the Venus is on the inside of the Sun, inside our, or so we can see it, right? The superior conjunction 9 months from now is on the other side. So what does that mean? That just means this only happens every 18 months. So this is a very important connection in a cycle that takes almost 8 years, right? A cycle that takes 8 years. Now, with Venus retrograde, Venus is what do I love, what I value, my relationships, how I use skills and talents to earn money. And, again, in Venus in the sign of Libra, all of those things I just said, those keywords, rewind if you need to, have to filter through Gemini. And Gemini is important things like communicating and getting around the neighborhood. I mean, they've just opened up a lot of the states here in the United States to people start getting out and socializing a little bit more. And that's Venus. And that's Venus in we value socializing, but that's Venus in Gemini retrograde. So we need to do this a little bit slowly. The retrograde energy is about reflecting and taking time to see what it is that we value. We need to, with this Venus in Gemini, we need to figure out what we value in how we communicate and what we think. Venus in Gemini is also represents our relationships. A lot of couples, you guys have been together for a very long time without a break from each other. It's beautiful and loving in some circumstances, but there's a lot of stress in other circumstances, spending more time together than you have in a very long time. Venus retrograde in the sign of Gemini is really focusing in on that. So this is an opportunity for you as a couple to come together, to create a deeper, more important bond with each other, or it's a time to potentially go and have some counseling. So you recognize that there have been a problem and there is a problem and you want to work it out. And so Venus in Gemini, especially while she's retrograde all the way until June 24th, there is this opportunity to communicate that. All right. Communicate what your problems are and work on evaluating if your relationship is moving forward and everything's fine, moving forward after you get over a few roadblocks, or not moving forward. And this is true for a very, very large number of people, because there have been a lot of stress going on when you're stuck together with somebody for such a long time. I live alone, so the only person that I'm arguing with is just in my head. And I am a Gemini, so there you go. No, kind of silly, right? Let me share my screen real quick. I'll show you what this looks like. And this is, just for those who like to learn, this is from my latitude and longitude. The numbers are the same everywhere in the world, but the placement will be a little bit different and the time of day will be a little bit different for our different time zones, okay? That's the sciences I'm going to get today, but this is just what it looks like. Sun and Venus are conjunct at 13 degrees of Gemini, 39 minutes. So, and it is square. Yes, it is. It is square to Mars. And with that square to Mars, that creates a fair amount of tension and unknown energy. What is unknown to us? The moon in Scorpio at this point in time is at a quincunx, which means making adjustments and going deep. That moon in Scorpio is very, very intense and deep energy. Once a month, it's more internal work. So you're hearing me say some similar words regularly: internal work, going within, shadow work, if you will, in your relationships. And the one thing I haven't talked about yet, I say we, but I mean me, is the money piece of Venus, right? So that's a big important thing too. I'm going to stop the share for now, because the money piece here is something that a lot of people have had an issue with too, with a lot of people losing their work for the last few months and trying to figure out how to cope and catch up. Now, there are such a variety of different financial circumstances for everybody. But there are people who, of course, are freaked out completely on earning a living because they've lost their work. Now, and I understand that, and I honor that. I have family members that are in the restaurant industry, and they are just barely getting back to work after months and months of no income. But the federal unemployment made a big difference. So it's just really bizarre, because there are a lot of issues around money and what am I worth? And you think about, well, I'm going back to work now, and it's not my personal circumstance, it's a situation I know of. I'm going back to work, I'm earning less than when I was on federal unemployment. So what is that? Is the federal government so unconnected to what everybody earns? I know this is overly political. I'm not overly political. And by issuing money, $600 a week, or are we not getting paid enough in our regular jobs? Big debate, which I won't talk about. I will not debate that, because I can see both sides of this. It's like fantastic. I get a little extra money for a few weeks while we're all being very incredibly stressed out. And then I get to go back to work. That's stressful too for some people. Oh, what a mess. So what this means is like, this is Venus in Gemini, where we're needing to really evaluate and go into that shadowy area, that shadow work. Retrogrades tend to do that a lot. And we're in this collectively, right? And it's like, okay, so what do I value? We already covered the relationships, but these words can still relate to the relationships. What do I value in my relationships? But what do I value in me? Am I worth more than $10 an hour doing all this work? What are your internal values, and what fears come up around money? So while Venus is retrograde all the way until June 24th, and then it's going to take her until August. I don't actually have that date in my head. Give me a second to get back to where she did go retrograde at. Yeah, it's Well, it's the very, very end of July. So it's going to take to the very end of July for us to even finish this shadow work and to figure out what it is we need and what we need financially, relationships, how we communicate that, and just doing that inner work. Because there's so much going on here and we haven't even gotten to the eclipse yet. That's why this year is just such a powerful, powerful year for evaluating what you're doing in your life, why you're doing what you're doing. And in circumstances like we're all in right now, it brings up the deepest internal fears, and especially fears relating to the family lineage, what your family line has taught you. Depending on your age, you either have grandparents or great-grandparents that taught your parents, because they lived through the prior pandemic and they lived through World War I and World War II and rationing. And so, are you feeding back into that, or are you recognizing it and doing what you need to do to move through it so you can feel most secure in your life and your life circumstances? Again, this is different for everybody. Okay. So, whew, I said a lot in that one. And I want us to stay focused on that. So June 3rd, I mean, seriously, that was a lot of information for just June 3rd. And you know why? I mean, I talked about June 3rd because that's when the sun and Venus are conjunct, but all of this energy and everything I just talked about has been going on for a while. All right. And April 9th is when Venus was at the number she'll stop at her retrograde at, which was 5 Gemini. So April 9th is really when it began, and then it won't end until like the last day, next to last day of July. And that's all the Venus stuff. So now what we want to look at too is you want to go back 8 years, because 8 years ago, so half of May and half of June 2012 is when Venus was in the same position, retrograding in Gemini. What came up then? Now, I talked about this, I think, a little bit in last week's forecast, but I'll reiterate now. And I can only do it from my own personal experiences. I remember making some choices back then based off of fear. And it was around money and a relationship. So I made some choices based off of fear. And it didn't take very long for me to recognize that it was not the right choice. I knew it instantly when I made the choice, and that it wasn't the right choice. But once I make a decision, I just went with it, even though I knew all along something wasn't right. And because I didn't trust myself, and I made choices out of fear. Now, I'm not saying you're making those choices. That was my personal story. What were you doing in that time period? So the last 2 weeks of May, first 2 weeks of June in 2012. That will let you know what you don't need to do this time around. So I know, personal story, that if I have important decisions to make around finances or relationship right now, especially between April, let me get my date again, April 9th and the end of July, then I know I need to double check myself that I'm not making a decision based off of fear. All right. So work on that, look back and see. I mean, and I wasn't even sure when I was looking at this a couple of weeks ago, and it's like, I don't know. I mean, I know what I was doing, but how does that relate to now, and how it relates to now? I finally discovered it when I was sitting here. My pastime lately is just working on jigsaw puzzles. And I know it's an exciting life. I've been working on jigsaw puzzles, and then I just heard a message, from my internal guides. And it's like, oh, it was that. And it was decisions based out of fear. And so it just came to me, because when I tried to think about it, I couldn't figure it out either. So do what you do to disconnect from the overactive mind, and then you'll find your answer too. All right. I'm going to move on to the eclipse on June 5th. and it is at, here on the Eastern time zone, it's at 3:12 p.m. It's at 15 degrees of Sagittarius. So what do we do with the full moon eclipses? Of course, eclipses are always powerful, powerful game changers. Now we start this one, we have 3 in a row this spring/summer. So today on June 5th, we have it on June 20th or the 21st, depending on your time zone. And then we have another one on July 4th or 5th, again, depending on your time zone. So let me grab my the chart of this for you, talk a little bit about it, and then I'm going to give you some time and some dates, prior dates, based off of the lunar family that the lunar phase family that this eclipse is connected to. Eclipses are powerful. You guys know that. You watched this many, many times. This is kick butt freedom. I want freedom. I need expansion. I need to get out there and move around. But it's also talking about being truthful and being authentic and being open and, you know, like really true to who you are. That moon in Sagittarius, of course, Sagittarius is a fire sign, so it's very lively and very energized emotionally. This full moon eclipse also is in a square to Mars. I talked about that just a few minutes ago with the conjunction of Venus and the sun. And so we have a lot of mutable energy going on here. And so it is definitely has a lot of culminating energy from prior new moon and first quarter moon. Okay. So I want to back up just a little bit and then we'll get to more of this in a minute. So here is the new moon. I want you to go back to the new moon, and this is December 7th, 2018. Now, these are called lunar families, right? And it's based off of this work, this astrological work by Dietrich Pessin, Lunar Phase Families. It's called Lunar Shadows. That's her book. So it's the predictive power of eclipses and the lunar phase family. So every new moon begins a new lunar phase family. And especially when we have eclipses in that family, because that whole family, it takes a little over 2.5 years, but almost actually a full 3 years to complete a cycle. I know I'm going off a little bit, but this is important because you're going to be able to see what's going on. Because I always talk about how to work with new moons, right? And how you can set goals and start, you know, plant little seeds of something. And so the eclipse we have on June 5th is related to the new moon right here that we had on December 7th, 2018. You need to go back to that time period, look at your journals if you're into, you know, the magic and the setting of goals. In December, that new moon was at the same degree, they're usually within a couple degrees of where we're having this eclipse on June 5th. So what seeds did you plant? What were you initiating back then based off of those Sagittarius qualities? Again, you know, freedom, truth, being authentic to yourself, being exposed to other cultures and other way of life. I know right now that is very, very limited because of our current global situations, but December 2018, it wasn't. So what seeds did you plant back then is what you want to do right now. You want to ask yourself that and look at that, because I'm posting this super early so you have time to prep for the full moon eclipse. I'll give you more information on that too. But I want to get to the next one, because the next thing is the first quarter. And when we get to the first quarter moon, that just means that the moon and the sun are in a square, and it's the exact first quarter. And that happened, here's the date, September 5th, 2019. Now, most of us don't pay attention to these middle phases. We only usually pay attention to the new moon and the full moon, and that's it. I like to look at all 8 lunar phases when I'm working with people's charts. But here, we're just going to talk about this now, this first quarter. So based off of December 2018, By the time we get to here, September 2019, now this reveals things that are emerging. It's just like a seed that's coming through, and it's finally through the soil, and you can tell if it's going to be hardy or if it's weak. You need to figure out what you're going to thin it out. And this is all gardening analogies, but most of you should understand that. You plant a bunch of seeds, not everybody grows really healthy. You have to thin things out. So when we get to that first quarter, this is where we can see emerging issues that are based off of the new moon seeds we planted in December 2018. Okay, so we get to here, September 5th, 2019. It's like we're just thinning things out and allowing the things and the goals that we set, Sagittarian goals. Again, what's my truth? What do I believe in? My sense of freedom, my learning, higher education. I haven't added that in yet. These are all Sagittarius qualities that we're focusing on in these 3 lunar cycles, okay? And so looking at that, what were you doing? It was really cool that this first quarter moon as well was connected with Jupiter. So there was a lot of expansion based off of what you started December 2018. And there is that. And so now the third part of it is this eclipse that is coming up on June 5th. Full moon eclipses, again, it's that culmination, complete, total, I'm ready to harvest my crop now, or I am ready to really, this is out in the world. Who am I? What am I showing? What am I doing? This is a wonderful opportunity if you're somebody who's been working on teaching projects or putting together classes. And for those of you, I'm the sponsor of this, right? This is where I would tell you to go to my Patreon page. The link is below. And if you join up on tier 3 for that monthly membership, then I do these things live. Not this one exactly, but I do a lot of this stuff live in there a couple times a month. And you can join us live and you can ask questions. Because if I've said something you want more information on, you can come and join me there. So please check that out. And that's one way that you can support me and all of the free content that I give here for you guys. All right. So what is with this eclipse? We want to feel that sense of freedom and that sense of independence. That's all Sagittarius qualities. And again, squaring that Mars, because Mars is at the midpoint of this eclipse, it really creates a lot of action based off of, these spiritual components, right? Neptune and Pisces are both right there. And that energy is this dream area, this area of pulling in what is our higher information and what we truly know, pulling all that information together so we're able to then put it out into the world through teaching and through just being incredibly authentic. Now, we can be authentic without being, jerks. Some people are just like wicked straightforward and, no matter what, their truth, they just hit you over the head with it like a hammer. And not talking about that, I'm just talking about being honest, living your life from your most authentic place. And that is really what we want to look for. Now, and to me, that's what I'm going to do with this eclipse. Now, one of the other things, I didn't pull this up yet. I have stopped my sharing for a second. See if I can get to one more chart here. See if I can open this up to the lunar phase family, the one in progress. So yeah, here it is. And so I'm going to share the final lunar phase, and it is March 5th, 2021. And that's when we're at the fourth and final quarter. Here is the moon once again in the area of 15 degrees of Sagittarius. So this is when we're reviewing what we started back in December 2018. We're reviewing it for the next 9 months. Each one of these cycles lasts 9 months, if you hadn't noticed yet. So what are we giving out? What are we receiving? We're distilling the information. We're closing things up over the next 9 months, which will take us back to December 2021, which is 3 years from when this started. All right. So I know that's a lot. That's a whole class that I'd love to teach. Message me if you're interested. I would like to talk about this for a couple of hours in a private class, which is all online, right? All right, I'm going to stop the share right now. So what does this tell us about this eclipse on June 5th? Tells us it is very important for you to start using the dates I gave you and to start tying up some loose ends. So when we have this full moon eclipse in Sagittarius, look at what house it's in for you so you know what more information you can glean from this. For me, it's in the 9th house, so I want to teach more and I just want to reach more people and I want to interact, not in such a strict way. Sag isn't strict, but in that casual way, like I just mentioned over on my Patreon group. I have a subject I bring to you guys and we all interact and we learn. And I love doing that. I've been doing it for a while. I just forget to tell you guys about it. So that's what we got with this week of June 1st, Holy Toledo, to June 7th. And I didn't even get into the rest of it, but maybe I'll throw up a couple of little Facebook Live things to pinpoint some of that stuff as we go through that week. But these two things are the biggest about, that Venus retrograde in Gemini conjunct the sun on the 3rd and this full moon lunar eclipse relating to all those other dates 8 years ago, 2012, and even, back in December 2018. So this is how we use astrology. Astrology is cycles and patterns that repeat themselves, but they don't have to repeat themselves on a flat plane. They repeat themselves. They do come around, but it's a spiral up. Sometimes it's a spiral down. Dark night of the soul stuff, right? But as we spiral up, we address an issue that we've already covered once or twice or quite a few times in our lives, but we get to address it again from a higher level. And that's a lot of what we have going on this week. Again, could talk about it forever. All right. Thank you, everybody, very much. And I'm going to leave you with that. Hope I haven't overwhelmed you too much. Personal private information, just come and purchase a reading right here. Thank you very much. Blessings. Namaste.